Hi and welcome. I'm Terry and this is English Bus. In this series, we will be using the AST Reading Key Core 3. This book is jam-packed, full of many different units for you to explore and learn more about different academic fields such as history, math, and language. This book has 3 chapters that are roughly divided into 8 units, 7 units, and 6 units. This book altogether has 21 units. Now it's our first lesson, so we'll open up and read from the first chapter and the first unit of the first chapter, which is entitled Early People and Civilizations. It begins on page 9. But before we begin, I have a question for you. What were some of the early prehistoric ages in human history? Do you know? Well, here, let's take a look at this timeline here. All the way in the beginning, we had the Stone Age, when people first started to come out and use tools. It began roughly 2 million BC. Then after many, many years passed, we arrived to the Bronze Age at 3000 BC. People began to use bronze tools and weapons as well. And then here we arrive at the Iron Age, which began at 1500 BC. The main point here is that people started to learn how to make not bronze, but now iron tools and weapons. So we'll talk about this and more when we get to the passage, but first, let's have a look at the keywords we'll be using today. Let's have a look at the keywords we'll be using today. Let's take a first look at the picture on the left here of this man standing up very tallly, very strongly. This man is a very primitive man. What does that mean? Well, it means that his clothing and his lifestyle are very basic. He wears very simple, basic clothing, has very simple tools like this stone tool in his hand and a stone wheel. Primitive means very basic, not very advanced. Primitive people lived during the prehistoric ages. Prehistory simply is a combination of the prefix pre, which means before, and the root word history or historic, which comes from history. So, the ages, the prehistoric ages, are all the ages before history, before written history. Before people learned how to write, it was those ages that we consider to be the prehistoric ages. And everything else that was prehistoric comes before human writing was introduced into society. Now on to our next batch of words here. Here we have very cold looking pictures. On the left, a picture of a glacier, and on the right, a picture of a woolly mammoth standing in a bunch of ice and snow. A woolly mammoth, like we see here on the right, existed during the Ice Age. The Ice Age was an age when the Earth was covered with large glaciers. Most of the Earth was covered with these glaciers. And it was very difficult for the humans to exist there. Most people were hunter-gatherers. A hunter-gatherer is simply a person that hunts for food and gathers for food as well. So they might hunt a woolly mammoth, like we see here, and they might gather fruits, berries, or other plants that they can eat. Humans had to endure long through the Ice Age. Endured, or endure, means to struggle through a problem, to push through and have a tough time but make it through to the end of the problem, such as the very cold Ice Age was a big problem for many people. Many people were also nomads. The hunter-gatherers were usually nomads. A A nomad is a person that doesn't live just in one place, but they move around periodically to different places to get their food and shelter. Now on to our next batch of words. Here we have a wolf, a sheep, and a small plant. A very nice plant. It was during the Stone Age that people started to grow plants and have farms. The Stone Age is a period that existed from around 2 million BC, like we just talked about before, and existed till around 3000 BC, a very long time period. But it was during that time period that people began to grow plants. They began to grow plants in fertile soil. Fertile soil simply means very rich soil. It's full of many nutrients to help plants grow up big and strong. Now they also domesticated animals like these during the Stone Age. To domesticate an animal means to bring it into society and make it learn how to live with people, for people. So they domesticated wolves and made them into dogs, and domesticated sheep to help us get food and to make clothing. Now on to our last batch of words here. Here we see a door handle on the left. A door handle all the way over here, made of bronze. Some man making something in the middle with his iron hammer, like we see over here on the right. Now during the Bronze Age, people began to learn how to make tools and weapons with bronze. They didn't just make tools, sometimes they would make other things like door handles. Like we have today, many bronze door handles are still very common. And then during the Iron Age, which began around 1500 BC, people began to learn how to make tools and weapons with iron. Like we have this iron hammer here with a very sharp point on its back end. All right, well, that wraps up the key words. Now, let's read. Let's read. Early people. A couple of million years ago, primitive humans were nothing like the modern humans of today. They were simplistic creatures that shared characteristics with both humans and apes. For much of this time, the earth was extremely cold. It endured a very long ice age. During the ice age, much of the earth's surface was covered by huge sheets of ice called glaciers. However, around 12,500 years ago, the ice age ended. The ice and glaciers receded, and humans began to evolve, to spread out, and to become more civilized. So, just to point out the main facts here in the Ice Age is actually more precisely called the Glacial Age because of all the glaciers that existed on the Earth at the time. It went through some periods of warmth, brief periods of warmth. The weather did change throughout the Ice Age. And there was also a bridge that connected Asia to North America. That is how people moved over from Asia to North America. And the polar ice caps and glaciers that we have today have mostly existed since the Ice Age and are only now slowly going away from global warming. Archaeologists have created a three-age system to describe prehistoric cultures. They are the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. The Stone Age is often divided into the Old Stone Age and the New Stone Age. The Old Stone Age was the first part of the Stone Age and began around 2 million BC. The New Stone Age was the last part of the Stone Age and began around 10,000 BC. During the Old Stone Age, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. They hunted animals and gathered wild plants for food. People could only make simple tools out of stone. Yet, people learned how to make fire during this age. Having fire changed human life a lot. Fire provided light and helped people stay warm. Most of all, people could cook their food. In the New Stone Age, there began to be some more improvements. People learned to farm the land. People also learned to domesticate wild animals such as dogs, sheep, and goats. Some people began to settle in villages where there was fertile soil for farming. Since they could grow their own crops and raise their own animals, they no longer had to live as nomads. However, they still used stone tools, so this time is called the New Stone Age. So the main points about the Stone Age are that people moved from being nomads to now having a very settled life in villages. People began to use fire for cooking, light, and warmth. They also domesticated animals and they began to grow crops and raise those animals as well. Around 3000 BC, the Bronze Age began in some parts of the world. During it, humans started working with soft metals such as copper and tin. They learned how to create tools and weapons out of bronze. The pottery became more common during this time. Around 1500 BC, the Iron Age began in Europe. Of course, it started earlier in some places and later in other places. During the Iron Age, humans began working with iron. Also, the first real cities began to appear and trade between cities became more commonplace. It was during this age that human civilization started to develop much more quickly than ever before. Wow, great job reading along with me. I hope it was very interesting for you. Well, go back and review, and when you're ready, let's move on to the checkup. Are you ready? All right then, let's have a look at the checkup. Question 1. What is one change that did not take place during the Stone Age? Is it A, people learned how to domesticate animals? B, people learned how to make fire? C, people learned how to grow their own crops? Or D, people learned how to make bronze tools? Which of these changes did not take place during the Stone Age? The answer is D. People learned how to make bronze tools. People learning how to make bronze tools was one change that brought in the Bronze Age. The three changes above, A, B, and C, all took place during the Stone Age. So the answer here is D. Now on to question 2. In which period did pottery become more common? Was it in A, Ice Age, B, Stone Age, C, Bronze Age, or D, Iron Age? Which period did pottery become more common in? Well, that was the C, Bronze Age. Besides bronze tools and weapons being made, pottery also became very common, or much more common than it was during the Stone Age. Question 3. During what period did the first real cities appear? Did the first real cities start to appear in A, the Ice Age, B, Stone Age, C, Bronze Age, or D, Iron Age? The answer here is D, Iron Age. It was during the Iron Age where we saw the rise of the first real cities that had the most and denser populated areas than both the Bronze Age and the Stone Age. So it was the Iron Age where the first real cities appeared. On to true or false questions now. Question 4. During the Stone Age, Earth was covered with large glaciers. Is this A, true, or B, false? This is A, true. The Ice Age began much earlier and ended around 15,000 BC, but for all of the rest of that time during the Stone Age, we were also in the Ice Age. So the Stone Age began at 2 million years BC and lasted until 3000 BC, and the Ice Age began earlier and ended around 15 BC. So all that time during that overlap in the Ice Age and in the Stone Age, we had large glaciers. Question 5. During the New Stone Age, all of the people lived as hunter-gatherers. Is this statement A, true, or B, false? This statement is B, false. During the Old Stone Age, everyone lived as hunter-gatherers, but it was during the New Stone Age that we saw people transition from being nomads and become now settled down in farms. So they switched their lives from hunter-gatherer nomads to farmers living in smaller communities. So the answer is false here. Now for fill-in-the-blank questions. Question 6. People began to settle in villages and no longer had to live as blank. What answer best fits in the blank? A, fertile people, B, domesticated people, C, nomads, or D, prehistoric people? The answer here is C, nomads. When people began to settle in villages, like we saw mainly happen during the New Stone Age, they no longer had to live as nomads. They now could set their own villages and raise their own crops. Question 7. People started making tools with soft metals such as copper and tin during the blank. Which answer best fits in the blank here? Is it A, Ice Age, B, Stone Age, C, Bronze Age, or D, Iron Age? The answer is C, Bronze Age. It was during the Bronze Age that people started to work with copper and tin and to make bronze tools and weapons. Now on to our last question, question number 8. In the New Stone Age, some people learned how to blank wild animals. Which answer best fits in the blank here? Is it A, domesticate, B, fertile, C, endure, or D, hunter-gatherers? The answer that best fits in the blank here is A, domesticate. So during the New Stone Age, while people started to settle in villages, they also began domesticating wild animals, such as dogs and sheep, to live in and help the villages. Wow, Great job with the checkup. I hope you had fun learning about the different prehistoric ages of human history. Now, that was just the first unit, and we'll continue on in the next lesson with unit number 2. So study hard, and until next time, bye-bye.